Now I'm very excited to bring back a former NFL player and Princeton University two-time academic All-American. You see him, hear him every single weekend, broadcasting football games and on the Even Money podcast, Fantasy Feast, and many others. I'm very excited to welcome back NFL insider, Mr. Ross Tucker, to the show. You can follow him on Twitter at Ross Tucker NFL. Ross, man, thanks for coming back mid-season here. It's nice and early. You're all over the place, man. Where are you going this weekend?
Well, first of all, Kiev, always great to be on with you. You do such an awesome job on the show. And just so people know the rock star that Kiev is, the only time I could do today was 8 a.m. Eastern, which is 5 a.m. local for Kiev. So you guys that are listeners, spread the word about the odds breakers because your boy Kiev goes the extra mile to make sure you guys get good content, get a good show. He's a stud, known him for years now. Really, all you need to do is listen to the Odds Breakers and the Even Money podcast if you're into betting NFL. Although I will say this, Kiev, I don't know if you've ever listened to the College Draft podcast, but my guy Emery, he was 5-0 last week. He's got to be over 60% this year. He's been very, very good. College Draft podcast if you like betting the college game. So speaking of that, this is the only week out of like a 6-week stretch where I don't have two games. 2 weeks ago, I did Bucks, Eagles on radio and then Yale, UConn on TV. Last week, I did FAU, Charlotte, and Wake Forest at Army on TV, which was amazing. And this week, all I've got is Bowling Green at UB, Buffalo on Saturday. But then Maction starts, man. So Tuesday night, I've got Ball State at Akron. And then Saturday that week, I'm actually doing Clemson, Louisville on the radio. And then I don't even know my game for Maction the week after that and Army. So especially college football, just to peel back the curtain a little bit, especially college football, it's a lot of work because not like the NFL where you already know all the guys. College football, you got to like memorize all the names and numbers of these, the too deep for these teams. And it's not like there's NFL Game Pass where you can just watch the condensed version real quick. Like you got to watch the hardcore coaching tape where you see each play like 3 times. It's just college football is actually a lot more work.
Ross, you are a diehard, man. I don't know how you keep up with it. And you got to say the names properly. I mean, there's all kinds of crazy names these days. I feel like it's a UFC event or something sometimes when I'm watching these football games and people are trying to say names. But man, that Wake Army game last week, I bet a ton of people tuned in the second half because the rest of the games were just flat out boring that morning. I mean, maybe people wanted to think that Kansas was going to beat Oklahoma or something, but that was the most electric game of the weekend, hands down. You do such an amazing job there. Total stud, Ross Tucker. So happy to have you back, man. And before we get started, we're going to do a little NFL, but I would like to ask this question kind of mid-season because when it comes to value in betting, there's perspective in the marketplace. And sometimes there's two teams that lose value that might be undervalued. And there's a couple teams that might be a little bit overvalued. So I'd like to ask you, which two teams do you think might be undervalued in the marketplace from an ATS perspective? And which two teams might be overvalued?
Yeah, so undervalued. I'm going to go with the Indianapolis Colts and the Miami Dolphins. So the Colts, they were still getting 3.5 points from the Niners on Sunday night. That was one of my big 2-unit wins on the Even Money podcast. Even just going into that game, Wentz had thrown 2 touchdowns and no picks in 3 straight games. And the Colts had won 2 of those games by double digits. The only game they hadn't was that Ravens game where they were up by double digits. They blew it. Their kickers killed them. Otherwise, they would have won that game. So, and now they just beat the Niners by double digits. So Wentz has thrown 2 touchdowns, no picks, 4 straight games now. They've won 3 of them by double digits. The only one they didn't was the epic Lamar Jackson perfection game on Monday Night Football. So I still think the Colts are a little bit undervalued, although not as much this week as I thought last week. And then the Dolphins. Look, I know the Dolphins are struggling this year. I know they've lost whatever it is, 5 in a row, 6 in a row. But to be getting that many points against the Buffalo Bills, 14, that's a lot. Tua has actually played pretty decently the last 2 weeks. Now, he has had 3 critical error interceptions. I just don't think the Dolphins are as bad as people are starting to make them out to be. So those are the 2 undervalued. The overvalued, it's the Chiefs. How on God's green earth were the Chiefs laying 5.5 points against the Titans on the road last week? How was that a thing? I mean, it is people, there's still a point tax spread right now on the Chiefs. And even, I know it's come down a little bit as I'm looking at it right now. They're laying 9.5. But who are the Chiefs to be laying 9.5 against anybody right now, let alone a Giants team that played pretty well? So I still think the Chiefs are overvalued. And then the 49ers. You know, I mean, do people realize they've lost 4 games in a row? They're losing by double digits in these games. You know, they're still banged up, still no Kittle, yet they were favored over the Colts. Now on the road in Chicago, favored by 3.5. I think the Niners are still overvalued, Kiev.
You know, great call on at least 3 of those. Colts completely. What happened to Wentz? He's looking like that 2017 Eagles team when Frank Reich was there coaching him up a little bit. You know, it's kind of like they really turned the corner. Love the pick. You know, they went to San Fran. They beat them at their own game in the rain. 2 years ago, you say San Francisco in the rain, nothing can stop them. The Colts did stop them. They ranked number 1 in rush defense EPA, and they also went over the top a couple times, really fooled their cornerbacks and drew some big penalties. I think the Colts you nailed it for the Colts. My 2 undervalued teams are Carolina and Denver. And Carolina started great, 3-0. Then they just lose 4 in a row, and they looked absolutely terrible last week. But now they're actually dogs against one of the worst teams in the league, in the Atlanta Falcons. And I know Atlanta got that win against Miami last week. It was over. It was at the very end of the game. They choked up that lead. I think Carolina might be a little bit undervalued now from an ATS perspective, not saying that they're a great team or anything. And Denver's finally getting healthy. You're going to get Bradley Chubb back. I believe Jetty's going to come back this week, and that was much needed, especially after the KJ Hamler injury. So I think Denver could be a sneaky little play here this week against Washington that has a lot of yards, but they're not that efficient when they get into plus territory. So I'm going with Carolina and Denver. But my overvalued teams, I agree with yours. I'm going to say Dallas is also a little bit overvalued. If you look from a opponent yards per play perspective, they rank in the bottom 28th, 29th. And it's almost amazing. They're just outscoring people and outclassing some people. But now they're going to Minnesota, which lots of people are high on Minnesota this year. You saw them play Arizona. You saw them play Cleveland tough when Cleveland was healthy, and they're laying 3 points on the road. You know, that's a pretty big statement there. And Tennessee, you know, which is it? Does Kansas City stink or is Tennessee great? Well, I don't think it's the extreme of either, really. You know, I know Kansas City definitely overrated, but Tennessee is not as good as what they've shown. That Buffalo game could have went anyway. It was a tough spot for Buffalo. They're at home both of those games. Now they're going on the road at the Colts, and this is going to be an interesting game for us to talk about, Ross.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Let's dive in, man. There's a bunch of good games.
There's a ton of good games. Let's start out with Arizona hosting Green Bay this week, and this is the Thursday night game. And I'll start here. I'll admit I gave out the 3.5, and in about 50 minutes it was gone. It went to 6.5, and it's between 6 and 6.5 now. The problem is at this number, it's getting a lot closer to where it should be. When I saw the defensive coordinator have COVID, the first thing I thought to myself, Ross, was he has to share rooms with his team. I mean, with the dominoes have to fall here. I better, because I kind of liked Arizona anyway. I was kind of, selfishly waiting for a 3, but as soon as that news came out, I'm like, this thing ain't going to 3. And so I hit it, but now at 6.5, it's a strong lean for me. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I would lean to the Packers. Now, Devontae Adams and Allen Lazard both being on the COVID list is tough, as is the DC. But I guess the Packers have won their last 6 games without Devontae Adams, which is amazing. And it's still giving Aaron Rodgers 6.5 points. I would lean Green Bay. If anything, it's maybe only a 1-unit play for me. But it's still, you get a chance to get Aaron Rodgers 6.5 points, prime time. I think you got to strongly consider that.
Okay, so the funny thing about your side, you don't take that until right before the game, and you can wait. You might even get a better number. But I think that there's potential you're going to see players drop off for COVID. You can see more happening, right?
Interesting. Okay.
So that is something that I would recommend if you like the Green Bay side. I have a shot at a middle myself, so I'm going to contemplate it later this week, seeing how high this number goes. Let's move on to a massive spread. Well, a big spread here. We have Buffalo, and they're hosting Miami, and it's 13.5-ish, 14. It just depends upon what book you're looking at. What do you have for this one? You think that Miami might be the most underrated team right now?
Well, yeah, I think they're undervalued. You'll just never see me, Kiev, lay that many points in an NFL game. I just can't do it, man. I mean, I just played in too many of them. I can't do that. This is a stay away game for me because the Bills do seem to have the Dolphins number the last couple of times they played, but I could only lean to the Dolphins and the points because, like I said, I feel like Tua has actually played pretty decently the last few weeks.
So it's very rare that I will lay over 7 in a game, but in this situation, looking at it, Buffalo likes to pick on the teams without winning records. And if you look just their last 5 games, not a huge sample size by any means, they're 5-0 against the spread against teams with a losing record. So that's pretty big. And that's just Buffalo style. Now, Buffalo's coming off a bye and a nasty loss at Tennessee. But back in your day, I don't know if you had too many losses go into the bye, but that's got to just give you that extra week to grind about it a little bit, I'd imagine. But looking at the metrics, this game's not close. I mean, I don't even have to go over it. You're looking at a team top and everything, and you're looking at a team bottom and everything. Now, the whole Tua factor is the question. Tua, man, they're already talking about his replacement. Their fans are screaming for even a Deshaun Watson trade, which is ugly right now looking for all the stuff he's going through. Last 6 games, Buffalo's won against Miami by double digits, man. This is the rare circumstance. I'm laying the minus 13.5 for a couple stars, Ross.
Got it. All right.
Let's move on to the next one then. And we have Carolina versus Atlanta. Now, I'll start this one. Both teams allow 4.1 yards per rush. Atlanta gives up 7.1 yards per pass to Carolina 6.1. Now, Atlanta, the better passing team, 6.5 yards per attempt to 6. But Matt Ryan, he ranks, he's a little bit better of a quarterback right now than Darnold. Darnold looked awful last week, Ross. I don't know what the hell that was. How do you not beat like a second string team in the Giants? I mean,
they didn't even get close. They got blown out.
They did. And a lot of people come on the side that Darnold sucks. But in my opinion, this is Darnold's I'm going to save my job type situation here. And maybe you see that Darnold type against the Saints. Maybe you see the good Darnold. He got out of that Jet Stadium, MetLife out there that he used to play in. And that was a big edge for people. They said, I'm not betting on Darnold. And the people that stayed away were right. But in my opinion, I think that this spread is a little bit wrong. My number is Carolina by 2. I'm going to sit this out and see if I can get a flat 3. Any thoughts?
Yeah, right now I can only lean to Atlanta. I like the way they're playing. I don't usually like to bet a 3. You know, if it gets to 2.5, I end up usually teasing that team up to 8.5. If it gets to 3.5, I usually end up taking the underdog. I love getting 3.5 points, but for this one, this is a no play. I'd probably lean Atlanta. It just feels like the Panthers are going the wrong way, and the Falcons have kind of figured out who they are a little bit.
You know, sometimes when a spread doesn't get to 3, it's very telling what the market thinks. And then sometimes the +2.5 is the correct side. So just a little tidbit there on that one. Philadelphia versus Detroit. Now, you know your Eagles, man. You covered their preseason quite well, Ross. This is, Eagles, I feel like they should be better than what they showed the last couple weeks, man. I mean, they're so up and down, lethargic or great with Hurts. It's just, I mean, they're both good against the run, really, allowing 4.1 rushing yards per attempt. Detroit's just bad at everything else. Last week was like an anomaly, and I was on Detroit last week because I just knew Jared Goff had to do something there, and the Rams sleptwalked through that game. But I mean, in this case, do you trust laying over or 3 or over with Philadelphia? I don't. I'm passing.
So I actually really like the Lions in this one. And I'll tell you why. The Eagles are kind of reeling. Now Miles Sanders is banged up. The Eagles haven't really figured it out on either side of the ball yet. And if you look at it, the Lions have been pretty competitive, Kiev, in almost every game, with the exception of that Bengals game. They've been competitive. I don't think they're an 0-17 type team. And you look at their schedule, home against the 2-5 Eagles is probably their best bet to get a win. So I think there's a very real possibility that the Lions win this game outright. Even if they lose, it feels like a field goal game either way. I like 2 stars on the Lions getting the points.
And I do just want to say that I purposely didn't listen to Even Money yesterday because I didn't want to come in with any reservations or sides. I will be listening to that today when it comes to this podcast. So
nice.
Make sure you guys check out Even Money as well, because Fezzik's a fantastic capper himself, always on this show every single week. Let's move on to the next one. I mean, I'm passing on this one, buddy. The Rams at Houston. This is just a massive line. I don't trust either side. I think Tyrod Taylor might come back. Thoughts?
Well, if Tyrod Taylor does come back, that changes a lot. But I don't. I very rarely mess with double-digit lines in the NFL. If anything, I'll take the points. I just, like I said earlier, I've been in these games. I think that's hard to do. This is a pass for me.
Yeah, the problem is I think the spread should be around 17 without Tyrod and around 14 with him, and it's at 14.5. So right there in the middle where I can't even mess with it. Here's a game, another stinker, Cincinnati versus the Jets. I mean, road favorite, -10. It was kind of between -9, -10. Looks like it's a little juiced here at this book. Total is about 43. I was thinking under, but then, man, you also remember how much that the Patriots got the over themselves last week against the poor Jets. I'm passing. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I think if it was less than 10, I'd probably lean Cincinnati. I'm really, really impressed by them. The way they took care of business in Detroit after that overtime loss to the Packers was really impressive. And then I think last week might have been the most impressive win any team's had all season, to go to the Ravens and beat them down 41-17. At 10, it's a stay away for me. If it's less than 10, I would lean Cincinnati.
And Cincinnati's in that grand salami sandwich between the Ravens and the Browns. So this is a spot that bettors do not like to back a team on. So I would bet that you see some contrarian Jets money coming in on this thing throughout the week. Let's move on to the next game. 263, 264, Pittsburgh Steelers +4 at the Cleveland Browns. +4, a little bit juiced at -115. Totals at 42.5. For this one, Cleveland dominates Pittsburgh on offense, ranking 13th in the EPA per play. Pittsburgh around 26th. Pitt's offensive line is bad, really bad. I mean, 30th in adjusted line yards. That's a big issue, and that's why you see Pittsburgh looking like they do. But Pittsburgh's coming off the bye here. This is probably even a more important game for Pittsburgh than Cleveland themselves. Cleveland's still quite injured, man. What's going on with Ward? What's going on with Conklin? Is Baker even playing? I would imagine he plays. I thought he just sat out Thursday. Chubb is questionable. Obviously, Hunt's gone. I think I'm going to wait on this one.
Yeah, for me, it would be Pittsburgh or not at all. I actually don't think Baker Mayfield's going to play. I think they want to try to let that thing heal, and Keenum played pretty well. But Pittsburgh's coming off a pretty decent win, and then against Seattle, then a bye. And I know the Browns got it done against the Broncos, but I had the Broncos getting 3.5. They came through for me. I don't know why the Browns are laying more points to the Steelers, or at least the same as they were to the Broncos. I'll take the Steelers and the 3.5 or 4.
No, I agree with that one absolutely here. And especially if those injuries still come to fruition, or at least a couple of them. Let's move on to San Fran versus my Chicago Bears. And man, the Bears have set offense back to the 1970s. And they have an offensive coach, Ross. So I hear you on 670 Score every once in a while, right? Telling it like it is, man. I don't disagree with any of it. Any thoughts on this spread, though?
I can only lean Chicago. I mean, San Francisco's not playing very well. The Bears were very disappointing against the Bucs. You know, Matt Nagy on the COVID list doesn't look like he'll be there for the game. We'll see. But I just think in the NFL, when a team gets blown out like the Bears did, they usually bounce back, especially when it's at home. I think this is a toss-up game right now with the way the 49ers are playing. So if you're going to give me 3.5 points on a home dog, I'm going to take them 1 unit on the Bears.
Do we have to give the Bears more points since Nagy's not going to make this game? I mean, they're so bad with him on the sidelines, man.
Yeah, I don't know that it makes a difference. You know, we've seen other teams where the coach isn't there, like Kingsbury in Cleveland, and that was one of the Cardinals' best games of the year. So it really depends on how much time I guess they're able to put in during the week.
All right. Well, we got a couple minutes left, so let's move along. Jacksonville versus Seattle here. I mean, Jacksonville's on the bye week, and Seattle's on the short week, usually assigned to the dog. But even with Geno Smith, man, I have this a 5-point spread. No, actually a 6-point spread I have with Geno. So Jacksonville just shows really weak against the pass and the run. I don't think the Urban Meyer is a fit in this not just this situation, in the NFL himself. The guy looks absolutely flustered. I think Seattle might be the play here. Geno Smith, if he doesn't show up this game, man, he's fighting for his second string job, and he won't have one next year.
So I'm going the other way. We're head to head on this one. I like the Jags quite a bit. They won a game, had a bye. I feel like they have shown some improvement. The Seahawks can't score. I mean, they cannot score. They tried to just run the ball into a wall the other night. I'll take the Jags in the 3.5.
All right. Well, look at that. We are a little bit head to head on this because I like the other side. That's good. That's good. We'll see what happens this week. Geno better show up for this team, or else he is donezo. Let's move on to the New England Patriots versus the Chargers here. And I'm going to call this a Hunter Henry game because Jonnu Smith's injured. And if you have a fantasy football, I think Hunter Henry's going to have a huge game this week against his former team. But I have the Chargers winning 27-24. So I think this spread is a little bit fat. Lean New England.
Yeah, I'll lean New England as well. I mean, they were right there with the Cowboys and the Bucks. So if they're getting 5.5, I'll take it.
All right, moving on to Washington, Denver. And I think that Washington's an absolute mess this year. I know Heineke out-yardaged Green Bay, but their efficiency is just terrible. As soon as they get in the plus side of the field, they choke up a little bit. I know that they have a good defensive line, but Denver's getting guys back on injury. I believe there's value on Denver. I got Denver winning 24-17. I'm taking Denver for a couple stars, buddy.
Interesting. This is kind of a stay away for me. If anything, I would probably lean Washington. I liked what I saw against Green Bay.
All right, Tampa, New Orleans. Tampa 0.7 net yards per play advantage over the Saints. Jameis Winston's not that guy before, but he's more of a game manager because that's what Sean Payton is making him. Both defenses are amazing in EPA, top 3. Brady usually doesn't do good there. I'm taking the under 50.
Interesting. I would just lean Bucks, but this is a stay away for me.
Stay away. We got Dallas versus Minnesota then. And I have Dallas winning 30-27 only because of the matchup here. Dallas is a great running team, and Minnesota is terrible against the run. If they're smart, they just run the ball the whole game, which is what Minnesota normally can do. But I think Dallas can move the ball better on the ground. I
love the Vikings as a teaser play up to 8.5. They're a teaser leg for me.
I think I 100% agree with you. Home dog 2.5. If you're getting 2.5, you tease that all day, every day with somebody else that looks like that situation, if possible. Last game, the Giants versus your overrated Kansas City Chiefs, Ross. And like you said, big spread here. Kansas City laying 10. Everyone's thinking Kansas City is going to step it up, but we haven't seen it this year. I only have KC by 7.5, so I have a strong lean to the Giants.
Yeah, I think the Giants, 10 or more, I think putting a unit on the Giants is the move.
That's the move, buddy. Well, we're out of time, Ross. Thank you so much for coming on. Where can our listeners get your great information?
Yeah, if you follow me on social media, at Ross Tucker NFL, you can see any of the shows that we post, but obviously the Even Money podcast is the big one with 2-time Super Contest winner Steve Fezzik.
All right. Make sure you guys check out Ross on Even Money.